Okay, so I'll do my introduction. I do apologize. It's a very busy day for me. So I'm Jeff Brown. I'm a retired IT guy, and what I did, we hooked up with Ingrid almost a year ago, right, Ingrid?
Yeah.
And recognizing that noise is a universal problem across Canada. I happen to live in British Columbia, so what my idea was to change. As Ingrid said, there's two ways of managing noise or vehicle noise or controlling it. One is the operation of the vehicle. So that requires, that's a policing effort. It's typically the Motor Vehicle Act that's being used. And you have to know who's operating the vehicle, what time of day, where they were, how do we know it's loud? There's a whole bunch of very strict things you have to do in order to issue a fine or a ticket. The other way of looking at a vehicle is the vehicle itself. Independent of whether it's driven or not, vehicles in Canada have to be licensed. And in theory, vehicles in Canada have to meet safety standards. And noise is a safety standard. Safety is all about protecting the person in the vehicle, but also outside the vehicle. And there's lots of scientific evidence and growing scientific evidence that excessive noise is very, very hard on people's health. So there are very strict noise constraints, standards for vehicles in Canada. When a vehicle comes off the assembly line, it has to meet those standards. So that's the original equipment manufacturer's specification for that vehicle. And it has to meet federal standards. When you install a loud aftermarket muffler, then you are no longer within spec. And actually that vehicle is, in theory, should not be licensed for use on public roads. If you want to put a loud muffler on your car and take it to the racetrack, no problem. But in theory, that vehicle is no longer legal to be operated on a public road. And we have an entire organization, every province does, that licenses vehicles and checks to make sure that they're legal. So this app is all about that side of the equation. How do we get those agencies which are licensing vehicles for being safe, for being legal, how do we get them to actually do their job and make sure that vehicles remain safe and remain within spec? So the goal of the app is to collect vehicle information, not vehicle operation information, vehicle information that says, here's a group of people who have identified potentially illegal vehicles because they're excessively loud. And humans are really good at figuring out when a vehicle is louder than it should be. So it's basically a crowdsourcing app. To crowdsource data. It has two purposes. The data will be used for lobbying to say, hey, here's the loud areas of the city. Here's how many people are being offended or upset or disturbed by noise. And here's how many vehicles that they're identifying. So that's, it's lobbying data. We have quite a bit of that already, but this is very targeted data. The second is to build a database that can be used by the vehicle licensing agencies. We can go to them and say, you actually can determine which vehicles to bring in for inspection. I mean, you can't inspect every vehicle, we understand that. But loud vehicles aren't hiding. They're announcing their presence. They're announcing that they're no longer legal for operation on public roads. Your executive walk down the street and hear these vehicles every day. They know that their organization, which is obligated to license, to make sure a vehicle's safe for public use, that they're not doing their job. We're hoping we can get them to start doing their job and bring these vehicles in for inspection. Okay, so let's talk about how the app's going to work, how a user is going to use it. We'll start with a small campaign of people who are involved with No More Noise, and then we'll make it more of a public crowdsourcing kind of capability. So let's talk about how to use the No More Noise app. Ingrid has set up a page on her website. So if you go to the nomorenoisetoronto.com website, this is the home page, and you go to the Take Action page. This is a new page, and what it has is a quick description of what this app does, basically what I just said, and there's a big red button that you can click on, and that fires up the app that I've written. Now, the nomorenoise.tooloud.org. tooloud.org is just the domain that I'm hosting the app on. So this is built specifically for No More Noise Toronto or No More Noise. And it's a web app, meaning it will work on your phone. It'll also work on your browser. Right now I'm using my browser. It works ever so slightly differently on the phone, and I'll explain why, but either way it works. So what do you do? So let's say you're one of Ingrid's trial customers and you want to be able to start reporting loud vehicles. You would go to her website, go to this, click the button, get this app running, and you have two things you can do. You can either take photos with your camera of loud vehicles. You want to make sure the license plate's visible because it's the license plate that we're targeting, nothing else. And so, get a picture of the license plate of a loud vehicle. Either save it to your phone and use it later, or right on the spot, you can use this app and just log it. And I'll show you how to do it both ways. So you've got the first thing we want, so let's start from the very beginning. You fire up the app, the first thing you do is just set your default location. I'll explain why that's important in a second, but the idea is we want to know roughly where you are when you do your noise reporting if the camera itself doesn't tag the vehicle's location, because if you have it enabled, your camera will put GPS coordinates in the image and we can extract those. So fire up the app, set your default location. I happen to have it so that it defaults to right next to the Ontario Court of Justice. I thought that was an appropriate location given what we're facing. But you can set it to whatever you want. So, if you're in suburban Toronto, you would move. All you do is you just find the location that you're typically going to be working on. Let's say you want to do a campaign, you want to go near, I don't know, Moss Park. You'd go there and you would set the location, and notice that the latitude and longitude of that location is now changed. So now any noise report that you generate that doesn't already have location embedded in the picture will be located in that area. I'm a privacy guy, but my IT career was all about cybersecurity. So this app is really private. There's no login required. It captures no personal data. It rounds off the location to 3 decimal spots, which is basically 100 meters. So nobody's going to be identified, right where they were standing when they were taking the picture. And that also applies with the vehicle. Exactly where the vehicle was doesn't actually matter, because it doesn't matter where it's being operated. It's the vehicle itself that's legal or not legal, not where it is on the street. Okay, so now that I've updated my location, I can start to use the app. What you will typically do is take a picture of a vehicle, or just if you want to use it right in the spot, you would click on, let me back that up. You click on this photo submission button. And what it does is give you the opportunity to either choose a file, a photo on your computer, or to use your camera. Now I'm on my browser here, so I can't open up the camera because I'm obviously using it right now. So what will happen is it will allow me to take an existing picture. Now Ingrid sent me a picture of a motorcycle in Ontario. So if you were using it on your phone, you could go to your camera and pick a picture, or you could just take a picture with your camera. And so that's the picture that Ingrid sent me. And then you just hit the Get Plate Information button. What's happening in the background is we're sending the picture to it's called ALPR, Automatic License Plate Recognition. It's basically a software in the cloud that analyzes the picture, extracts the plate information. And this one's interesting because it successfully got the license plate number, but it didn't get the jurisdiction. Jurisdiction is who's the issuing agency for the license plate. In Canada, it's the provinces. In the US, it's the states. In Europe, it's typically the country. Like in New Zealand, there's only like a New Zealand plate. So it wasn't able to detect what jurisdiction this plate was, because this plate just says ONT, because it's a small motorcycle plate. Not a problem. You would just go in and you would find where we are. So we know it's an Ontario plate, and humans are really good at doing this kind of stuff. So great. Ontario plate, check, make sure, yep, license plate's correct. Now, it used the default location that I just set because this picture doesn't have any GPS information in it. If it did, then it would just put in that location, and notice how it's rounded off. It's only to 3 decimal places. That's that 100 meters, plus or minus 100 meters. And we do keep track of the vehicle type, not just mainly, it doesn't really matter from a, vehicle licensing perspective, but just for lobbying, or most complaints from motorcycles or trucks or whatever. And that's it. Then you hit submit. What's happening now is the back end, the database, is extracting out just the information we care about. We keep track of the location, round it off, the vehicle's type, the vehicle license plate number, and the jurisdiction, and that's it. Nothing about your phone, nothing about where the user, nothing, like not even time of day, because none of that matters. It's whether or not the vehicle is safe, whether the vehicle itself is fit for use. Doesn't matter when you took the picture. So that's it. That's the simplest way of doing it. If you wanted to run a campaign, you would get a couple of people out on the street, take a bunch of pictures, hopefully leave your GPS turned on, come back home, fire up the app, and then just run through that photo submission as many times as you need to grab each picture, submit them, done. You've now created a little mini database of one spot in Toronto that has where a lot of vehicles are. The other approach is called manual submission. So that's if you don't have a photo, you just click on that button. Looks pretty familiar. It's exactly the same page as we got, but there's no automatic license plate recognition. So you just type it in. You just type in what the plate numbers is here. You say what jurisdiction it is, what type of vehicle it is. Maybe this one was a truck. And then you hit submit. And same thing, it just, once again, extracts that information and submits it to our database. That's vehicle reporting. That's how simple it is to use. Now let's take a look at the database. How are we going to use this information? If we get a vehicle licensing agency to use it, we have an API, an application programming interface that will allow them to get into the database. We'll just give them this basic information, no personal information provided. And then they can start to tag vehicles that are getting a lot of noise complaints. If a particular license plate has got 30 complaints, probably time to bring it in for safety inspection. If you get one random complaint off in the boonies somewhere, okay, maybe they don't bring it in. That'll be their decision because they have the legal jurisdiction to do that. For lobbying, we want to get an idea of what's happening. So there's 3 places you can look at the statistics using this app. I'm going to start with the simplest one. This is statistics by jurisdiction. So I've cleared the database. This is a brand new database just for Ingrid's campaign that's coming up. So there's exactly 2 complaints in it because we did this once earlier in the week. So we've done this demo twice. So there's 2 complaints, both of them on the same vehicle. So here we've got 2 complaints. This plus minus sign, that just means it's the same vehicle. So there's been 2 complaints issued against this one vehicle in this case. And they were both complaints from the motorcycle. If you wanted to compare, let's say we wanted to look at how does Ontario compare to, say, Quebec? Well, what's going to happen is there are no statistics for Quebec because we haven't run it yet. It's a clear database. But if there was, you could start to take a look at how do provinces stack up. Or for that matter, you could take a look at U.S. states. You could take a look at New Zealand or some of the European countries. I've got it set up so it's a worldwide capability. So this is the kind of data that you can use to start to understand where how does Ontario compare to other places, and basically use it for lobbying. The other place, kind of the fun place to use the stats or to see the stats is on my map. So this is the other use of your default location. It centers the map of where you're going to display statistics. So let's display the map. And what do we got? Well, we've got a map of Toronto, and this is a 3x3 grid, and the cell size is 100 meters. They're kind of funky shaped because latitude and longitude don't exactly round off to the same distance because the Earth's, anyway, technical stuff. This is complaints within this square on the map. That's how many complaints there are. And in this case, there's exactly 1 because that's the one we just created. We can make the map bigger. So we can maybe make it a kilometer per grid. So now I'm rounding off the 2 decimal places. We can add more values. Let's make it 7x7. And now we're going to cover pretty much all of downtown Toronto. Okay, so here's the information, or the red means the number of complaints is above average. Yellow means it's about average. Gray means there's no complaints. This is where you start to get what they call a heat map. You can start to see the hot spots within Toronto. So here we've got 2 complaints have been issued in this area and only 1 complaint in this area. So this one's above average. It's got a whole 2 of them in it. Whoops. And so it's red. Obviously, when we have a lot more statistics, it'll be more relevant. Red will really mean something. So what this one has 2 because we've ran the presentation before, and we've done it twice, and this one's got the 1 in. It happens to be the same picture, but that's fine. So this is the kind of map you would use in a presentation. If you're presenting to the city, if you're presenting to the police, or you're presenting to Ontario Transport, you could show them a map of Toronto. You can show them a map of Ontario if you want. You can blow this up to 100 kilometers, and cover, a big chunk of the province if you wanted, and show, how do we compare to the, the whole area. That's mainly for lobbying. The other way of showing the data is using the statistics page, and it's exactly the same information. It's laid out in the grid exactly the same way. It's just in a grid format, easy to cut and paste into a spreadsheet. So if you wanted to build up a database or a spreadsheet of information, you could use this approach. Same thing, it's got all the same features. You can expand the grid size, you can make it bigger, and it just does the same stuff. And same thing, you just hover over the cell and it tells you what it is. So this one's got 3 complaints, all of them are motorcycles, because it's the same picture. That's the entire app. So user guide that basically walks through what I just did. And since it's a brand new app and we've kind of custom built it for no more noise, we're looking for feedback. Feedback about the functionality, not so much whether it's pretty enough or not. We'll make it more public consumable later. This is more of a functionality test. And remembering that the app's the app is focused on a very, I'm going to call it a narrow purpose. It's to identify loud vehicles. It's not to identify vehicles that were operated at night, or that's not its purpose. It's to flag vehicles that are known to be noisy. If you want to provide feedback, you can just go back to Ingrid's website, and just below that big red button that launched the app, Ingrid has set up a feedback link, and you can click on that link and you can add your feedback. Give us some ideas of what functionality might be missing, what you like and don't like about the app. Okay, that's essentially it. That's the app.